1, 2. Ooh. Oops. Yes. Good morning, ladies and gents. Let's grab our seats and get ready to get going. It's exactly 9 o'clock. We are waiting one or two media colleagues who said they are on their way. So we will go slightly slow just to give them a second. Everyone's got coffee, something to drink, all good. Get ready to go. All right. This is a bit loud. Yeah, thank you. I think we are also live on live stream, am I correct? Yes, okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Razi. I work here at the MBDA. I'm the spokesperson. You are here to attend a media briefing on the report that we launched sometime last year to look at the economic impact of the work of the MBDA and other stakeholders in the Valley. It's important for us to understand the impact of the work that we do so that we can always adjust and readjust our strategies to make sure that what we are actually wanting to achieve is measurable and is visible and tangible. We have a very light program, but I'd like to introduce some of the people that are key to the program. And without protocol, to my right here is Thomas Parsons. He's from a company called Urban Econ. Urban Econ are the economic specialists that were tasked with this job. They're not new to this. They had done this work for us since 2009 when we were launching and publishing economic barometers for the precincts that the MBDA was involved in. We were quite happy to be able to work with them again on this pilot study. So Thomas Parsons, the economist, senior economist at Urban Econ, and his colleague Matthew are here, and they will be the ones delivering the actual report. I think it's best to get it from the horse's mouth. To my left is my colleague Dorel Sapere, who's a senior project manager and urban planner. Dorel will be talking through the work that's currently underway in the Baakens Valley, and also some work that we've done in the past, but I think it gives us a good context of where we are in terms of what we are actually planning to do. We have our CEO in a bright suit, Mr. Anile Kaba, who is here, who will be giving a chat a bit later on, but maybe before we get going, CEO, is there something you'd like to say before we start? Okay, all right. The CEO is here. All right, so without wasting time, can I have my computer on screen there, if it's possible? It's really, as I said, a very short program. And again, welcome to all our media colleagues who are here. We also have business operators here from the Valley who have noticed a couple of them here. Did I see SA Canvas somewhere? Yeah, there we go. It's great to know that this business community is interested in what's happening in the Valley. We've seen with a lot of work that we've done together, the MBDA and the stakeholders, property owners here, a lot can be achieved. But without wasting time then, let me hand over to Dorel Sapere to take us through where we are with the Baakens program. And after that, we'll get the presentation of the report. For those who've got these packs, the actual report is in there, so if you want to make notes and comments whilst Matthew and Thomas are going through it, please feel free to do so later.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So just a quick update on the status of the project, but clearly we just need to start at the beginning, which goes back to 2015. And the MBDA had just completed the upgrade of this building that you are sitting in, tramways. And we were needing to understand how can we go the extra mile, what could we do more to turn around this particular precinct. So we commissioned a Baakens River Precinct Plan study undertaken by GAP in 2015 that really looked at what is this magnificent 23 kilometers of spectacular upside-down Table Mountain in our city, this wonderful asset that we have. What can it do for us as a city? And so we did quite a lot of in-depth work around the precinct in the national context. So it wasn't only looking locally, but it was looking nationally, provincially and locally to see what could happen. And what we realized that if we look at the inner city and where we are thinking now, there are 4 key game changers, including the Baakens Valley precinct. So Transnet, if you look at this little map, which we like using just to explain the current vision that we have of the inner city. When we started the Baakens Precinct Plan in 2015, ECDC supported us in what was to have been the plan for the waterfront and the Baakens, because we realized that the two together is the absolute amazing opportunity that we have. So we set about starting to do the planning then on both. It triggered a press release to Transnet, and at that point, post 9/11, only Transnet plans on Transnet land. So we had to drop that side in a bit of a quandary. What do we do now? So we thought, no, well, waterfront will take a while. We can start somewhere and we can start quick. And as our CEO always pushes, start with the low-hanging fruits as soon as possible. So we did, and that is where the precinct plan started. So just to go back to the vision, we're saying that in fact the waterfront, the unique waterfront that we have, is what Transnet puts forward as their parcel of land on the sea frontage, but we've got these 2 amazing river frontages, and together we've got a world-class opportunity, and it's in that context that the Baakens Precinct Plan was developed. So the precinct plan had about 50 large, small, medium projects in it. It extended to 23 kilometers of the river as to what could happen, but we cut off at the bridge to say that is the precinct that we would work on as MBDA, and we highlighted a couple of particular issues that we wanted to work on in the short term. But the bigger plan is there, and the bigger plan is there for take-up by the private sector, because there are many opportunities still in that plan that are open, and private sector could get involved, because it's not only about building transformation, it's all sorts of things, events, spatial, tourism. So the plan was divided into 4 focus areas. The 4th one, clearly the waterfront, has become Transnet's competency. So while we sit in those meetings and discussions, we don't really have a hand in it. But the other 3 were. So the heart of the city, the inner city, St. George's Park area, which we have not done much work on, but that still stands. Our main focus today is to talk about number 2, where we have put a lot of energy into that particular precinct. So we set ourselves a target of 8 key immediate projects that we wanted to do, the tramways building being the first, and that, as you all know, has been functioning quite successfully to change around this part of the city with new feet and new people coming into the Baakens that might not have been here before. Then we set about St. Peter's Church. We built a bridge, pedestrian bridge, that was part of a bigger plan to link Vuyisile Mini Square into the South End precinct as a tourism product. The South End mixed use, we are very aware of the parcel of land which is identified as number 7 on the screen, that has a very precious memory to our city. Many people were forcibly removed, their families suffered, and while we want to transform that precinct, we are very mindful that we need to do so in a very sensitive way that gives back to South End that which was of South End. What that actually looks like, we don't know yet. We're busy with the planning of that, but that was a project that is very dear to all of our hearts. The zipline and viewing platforms, trying to unlock the tourism potential of an urban context where you have this high-low city that we have, which is one of our assets. To bring in a zipline that could be part of tourism is very much on the radar and is being elevated as a low-hanging fruit. CEO, your words once again. We're also looking at a children's park Planning has started. We're looking at what we call the walkways, the landscaped walkways. Planning has started on that, and the Fort Frederick precinct. So the projects that we have already completed, the tramways building, the bridge, which you all know, St. Peter's, phase 1 and 2. The South End mixed-use precinct has been submitted for rezoning. Once the rezoning has happened, we can advertise to private sector, or we could develop the land ourselves for an affordable housing, mixed-use tourism product that would really bring something special and unique in memory of what was South End. And the Vuyusili Mini Phase 1. What is on the ground, about to be launched and open towards the end of October. Lou, looking to you for a nod. St. Peter's. We are rehabilitating the St. Peter's precinct, which is a very, very strong memory of South End. The church was always the wayfinder for fishermen. Lots and lots of poignant memories around that. And we will be unlocking an opportunity, coffee shops, tourism, and opportunities to tell the stories and to celebrate this part of the city. Within walking distance from the cruise liners that will be docking, it makes for a very, very good place to celebrate our heritage in the valley. The upgrading of the Baakens River Park is in process. We have prepared designs. We have started with a walkway planning for that. The river park will be a longer term, higher budget, but really it is about getting people to cycle more, to have better pedestrian and vehicular access, really to have a space for outdoor events. Again, you'll see the theme of tourism, events, markets, people, and really just to create a great outdoor space in the valley and maximize what we have here. The Baakens zipline, we hope to advertise an expression of interest so that we can unlock that in the short term, to have this really cool, funky, awesome zipline in the heart of a city, walking distance to a harbour, passengers coming in from overseas to have a quick fix in the valley. And then the last project which we would be focusing on would be the Vuyusili Mini Square, the phase 2. We've started phase 1, which was really the connection between our building up to Fleming Street, and now we want to continue what was started in 2016. 15-16, the planning is already done, so we will be unlocking the tidying up of that heart of our city, which is in such a sad spot at the moment. The space, we hope to turn it around into something really great. And then lastly, the bridge, a little bit of background on the Baakens Unity Bridge. There's been a bit of criticism to say, what's this bridge doing in the middle of nowhere? Well, this bridge tells a story, again, South End and what South End used to be, and it is a very, very crucial connector from pedestrian, cycling, even seen skateboards there, that links the city to this part of the precinct in anticipation of the development with housing and mixed use further up in the valley. Thank you. That's all from our side.
Thank you, Dorel. Without wasting time, as I mentioned, in the pack you have the full report that has been published by us. But to present the report, we thought let's get the people that worked on it. So I'll call Thomas Parsons from Urban Economics, the senior economist there, to talk us through how they've arrived at what they've arrived at and what are the key what are the salient points from the presentation.
Thank you, Luvuyo, and everyone for joining us here and online. So it gives me great privilege today to present some of the outcomes of the pilot study that we did into the Baakens River Economic Barometer. As Luvuyo was saying earlier, in addition, this is the 20th celebration of the MBDA, and I've actually had the privilege of being involved with the MBDA for my entire working career, so 15 years. So I've started on, it's my second project ever, to work on the initial economic barometer that we conducted for the MBDA between 2009 and 2011, where we looked at some of the perceptions and impacts of the various capital and catalytic projects that the MBDA conducted. So at that time, it was the upgrade of Governor Mbeki Avenue and Parliament Street as well, if you can stretch your minds back as far as that, security and cleaning upgrades, and then moving on to the Donkin. So that is a very useful base for understanding and measuring the impacts and perceptions of both businesses in by the private sector, as well as residents who stay within the community. So the MBDA now wishes to reconduct that study into its other various focus areas and catalytic projects, where catalytic projects Sorry, back. Okay, thank you. So this serves as a basis for future and subsequent assessments. So just to put some context to the study and where we looked at. So many of you are familiar with the Baakens River area and the history of South. So it really is the origin of the city, and it's a core and vibrant cosmopolitan community, much like District 6. This was back when Southend was at its heyday. But it's also a critical environmental corridor, the green lung of the city per se. But there is a very diverse mix of offices, office space, businesses, and some housing, as well as a whole range of social amenities that really do present considerable opportunity for the city and to stimulate growth and development of this heart of the city. But just in and obviously the numbers matter. So just of its estimated contribution, it has about a contribution of 64 million, just that little tiny section of the valley, but it's still a relatively small part of the city's overall. Do surveys with the business and residential community within that little red area, and we identified 60 businesses operating within the area, and we conducted a fairly detailed survey with with these various businesses, which I'll some of the shortly. And 28 businesses participated in the survey. So this is the consolidated results of it. Indication of the types of businesses that are in the area. So it's primarily a manufacturing hub, but it really does have an eclectic from broadcast advertising. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Algoa FM building, but also architectural services. But really the real hub of Sorry, I do apologize for the sound here. But the real hub of it is there are an estimated, technical people around me. There are just under 400 people based on the survey that we did. So if we sort of extrapolate this out, we estimate that there are almost 740 odd people employed within the area. But I think the real positive story here is we actually asked businesses whether they had employed additional staff over the last 5 years. And you can see there positively 46% have employed additional staff over the last 5 years. And that even includes the COVID pandemic. So its very diverse nature helped to make it particularly resilient during the pandemic, and has actually seen some employment growth within the area. So you can see there only 11% looked at retrenching workers over the COVID period, but subsequently employment has risen by almost 23%. Just turning to turnover, again, much like employment, the turnover figures present a similar trend. There's been 48% of businesses indicated their turnover has actually increased, either slightly or significantly over the last 5 years. And essentially what it's attributed to, based on what the businesses told us, was increased foot traffic in the area, increase in consumer demand, and new business models that the businesses have adopted. So another thing that we looked at is the improvements that have been made by the various businesses. So you can see there again, this positive sentiment is clearly echoed by the survey outcomes. 71% of businesses indicated that they had made some form of improvements to their property over the last 5 years. But given that the vast majority of the business community in the area doesn't really own their property, they typically are renters, you can see that the majority of the improvements that have been made were to the interior of the properties. And turning to what this actually means in some numbers again, so 72% of businesses indicated that they spent less than 500,000 Rand on these various upgrades. So again, I think that's very much due to the nature of the types of business operating in the area. Mainly they rent. So looking at it, we're looking at about 383,000 Rands worth of improvement value per business. So if we again extrapolate that outwards, we estimate that over the 5-year period, the surveyed businesses invested about 8 million Rand, 8.5 million Rand. And if you expand that again to the rest of the businesses in the area, we estimate about 5 million Rand, 15.3 million Rand in improvements. Again, that's improvements, that's not necessarily investments. I will be showing you some of the main investments shortly. Also, when asked, businesses were asked what sort of role did the MBDA have in their decision. Did it have a positive impact? Did it encourage them to invest in the area? So upgrades that have been done, the one-way road, the circle, development, the pedestrian bridge. So 46% of businesses attributed it to the MBDA to having some form of impact on their. And also again, just emphasizing the positive nature of the business community within the area. 60% of businesses indicated that they're looking to make further improvements to their property over the next 5 years. So just some of the comments that we received from the various business owners. It was again very positive. There was very much a feeling of the business community really liking the vibe in the area, the diverse nature, being close to the ocean, having good access to the harbour, but also just generally the business community was very positive and had a very good view of the area. Just turning to some of the perceptions. So businesses were also asked, since the upgrades have, what sort of types of improvements have they received in various indicators? So the upgrades have had a really positive impact in addressing, as you can see, their congestion and derelict properties, but it's really and also had some positive impact on landscaping and to a lesser extent addressing crime. Then we were asked specifically about the MBDA's activities. So again, the MBDA commissioned the study, so they really wanted to have an understanding of how their upgrades within the particular area were achieved. So you can see there that the tramways upgrade and the Baakens Unity Bridge were viewed very positively, as were the functional upgrades, which is the sort of one-way road, the circle, and the environmental upgrades within the area. So you can see generally 86% viewed the tramways building positively and the functional improvements in a positive light. when we asked businesses, which I think is again critical for the MBDA and having an understanding of their future trajectory in the area, what type of improvements that the business community would like to see in the area. So you can see there, human safety really does top it off. I think that can be echoed by many people across the city, but then also urban renewal interventions, as well as types of business support. Okay, just turning to some of the investments. So in addition to the survey, we undertook desktop analysis and a study of some of the core catalytic investments that have happened throughout the area over the last 13 years between 2010 and 2023. So on your screen there, you can see the various catalytic investments and the estimated value of some of these investments by both the public sector as well as the private sector. So, but I think there the big and core takeaway figure is that an estimated 265 million rand have been invested into the Baakens Valley area over the last 13 or so years, representing a mix of primarily public sector investment, but also quite a bit of private investment. So we think there of the Momsen's Bike Factory, the Algo FM building, as well as some as the sort of key investments within the area. So all but last, talking about the economic impact, and again, this is where I have to put my economics hat on, but I won't bore you with the details of it. But essentially, we want to quantify what impact this investment, this injection of 273 million rand, which includes that 265 million that I mentioned as well, the improvements that have made, what impact they have had on the economy in terms of their contribution to GDP, employment, and incomes. So that the project has had, the investments have had a significant impact on the city's GDP, increasing it, and has also created an estimated over almost 1,200 jobs, helping to raise household incomes by over 163 million rand. But also turning to some of the contributions that the various investments have made to the municipality's economic viability. So as I mentioned, primarily businesses in the area rent, but they were also asked whether they had seen their property value increase or decrease over the last year. And you can see 75% saw their perceived their property value to have increased. So from that, we were able to complement that with an assessment of municipal valuation of the various properties. So the municipality values the various properties within the area at an estimated 61 million. So they actually see that the value of property has dropped, but I think clearly the information that we have seen has shown that there has been a clear increase in property value. But these properties collectively help to bring in an estimated 1.4 million in revenue for the municipality on an annual basis. So I think that really highlights the positive impact that the area is having. So yes, I think thank you very much for everyone's attention. All I can say is that the overall sentiment from the business community is very positive about the area, even despite some of the pressing challenges that the city is facing. It's still viewed very positively, and they are hoping to invest in the future. And I'm fairly confident that the MBDA's investments within the area will certainly help to stimulate this investment further. Thank you very much. Over to you, Program Director.
Program Director. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Tom. Tom, I sometimes want to call him Professor Tom from Urban Econ. He will be available for questions and answers. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, things to be clarified. Next on our program is just a final takeout from our CEO, Nele Kaba, who I'm sure has one or two things to share. Over to you, CEO.
Thanks, LB. Good morning, ladies and gents. I'll be very quick. I think for me, as a takeout note, maybe I must just make some few comments. One, I think based on its unique location, that creates natural riverfront, we can all agree that the Baakens itself is a cog in unlocking the development of our inner city. I think that's a given. The that we are having is that if we can deliver a total precinct management perfectly right here, we can definitely do it anywhere else. So for us, this is very important that if we get it right here, we can be able to do it anywhere else. What this report has done is to give us a base which we can use again in giving such reports, because we must account in terms of what we are doing. And there must be assessment in terms of the work that the MBDA, and that must be done anywhere else where the MBDA is operating on, which means that as a start here, but we must go to the CBD and any other area based on our strategy and do the same. But what is of note again is the role of the private sector, because as a development entity, what we do is to provide a stimulus in the market to build confidence, do its job. The catalytic effect of the investments which we have made as public, private of course, will help in the main, because this is a role of government or any government entity anyway, is to create an environment for the private sector to invest. So to us is that we should continue doing it. As an MBDA, let's do what we need to do. For us, we need to create that environment must be conducive enough to get the private sector to make investments in the area that we operate on. It is evident from the report, MBDA has some influence, of course, in terms of what the market and I think the report itself does, because if you look at some of the take-out notes, the recommendation is that what the MBDA has done has got some influence in terms of the decisions by some of the business people in the valley. It is worth noting the environmental upgrade we did. The conversation from two-way to one-way has yielded less congestion, encouraged property revamps, and made the valley more accessible. And I'm sure you'd see as you go down the work that the MBDA has done. Going forward, we note the call for more interventions to deal with crime in the valley. I think that presentation did indicate that particular aspect. We're working hard to develop a plan that will be canvassed with all stakeholders to tackle this problem. We've already said with some of property owners in the Baakens, and there's a plan that we're working on which will include additional patrols in the valley. So we are not just taking that from the study and we're doing nothing. So there's a plan that we're already working on, and we've got the manager, the Nzago, is busy with the spec. He actually said that we must have now a different form of security which we operate on that will be more hybrid. That for us, that must be also include the issues of patrols, and preferably maybe with the dog unit. That must have a control room, and we'll also be looking at placing some cameras, because we've seen that the way that we've just having those security guards is not really effective. Guards can literally chased by criminals and they run away, we believe it. But guards or security who can chased away by criminals, it can't be. So we are busy with that. We are hoping that it will be going to the market as soon as possible so that we get that resolved, we get security in the areas in which we operate in as soon as possible. We also have taken note of the calls for more business support services, because as we're engaging again with the businesses, they've indicated that some of their frustrations in terms of moving or going ahead with their investments in the valley and in other areas in which we operate in as the NBDA, which is the NBDA mandate area. There are some frustrations in terms of the processes by the municipality being rezoning and any other approvals that they require. And on that note, as an NBDA, we are also considering to have some form of one-stop shops in areas in which we operate in, so that the businesses that are frustrated can actually raise those issues, especially by the city, to us, and then we can be able to take those issues directly to the city and try and fast track them. Because at the end of the day, we're not just here as an NBDA, but we need to ensure that the businesses and investments, are taking off in this particular area. To our media friends, and I can tell you today that there are a lot of stories that are being told there, out there, be it by media or anyone, that I can assure you that are not true. But I can tell you this one is a true story. And I can tell you that it's a good story made in Gqeberha by the people of Gqeberha. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. Okay, so we've had two presentations and a summary. We've had Doral's current projects underway and a bit of a look back in terms of where we come from. We've had thanks, Russ. We've had Thomas, and the CEO is here. We are slightly ahead of schedule, so it's good in terms of time. Just want to highlight the last 2 pages of the report. If you're looking for sound bites or you're looking for headlines, the performance aspect and the economic impact aspect is probably where if you're rushing, you want to get to. 950 million rand in additional production generated over the period. 310 million rand increase in national GDP owing to the investments in the area. 1,133 employment opportunities created. 163 million rise in total household income due to the investments in the valley in the last few years that have been counted. We have an opportunity for questions and answers. We have planned access to St. Peter's, the development site up there that you met earlier. So those who are interested will walk across. In fact, I think we have to drive across the south end entrance. So we've got to go up by a station. Any questions for Dorel, Thomas, the CEO? Going once. I see. I think you can press that button there. Let's see if it works.
There we go. Seeking a bit of clarity, this is over the last 5 years, this survey.
No, so the survey was done this year. We asked historically between the periods over the last 5 years.
Okay. Then may I challenge you about the major investments? Because you've included investments from 2010, 2011, 2017. If we're truthful to that and we take that away, then the balance seems to be more on the NBDA side in terms of investment than on the private sector. And it looks worse if we look at things like the Baakens factory, which was burnt down, and that surely was an insurance claim. I know it brought money into the thing, but I mean, if we look at it very carefully, we're looking at 23 million rand from private investment, and like a thing, 100 and something, nearly 200 million from NBDA. It seems to be a bit skewed for my eyes.
Yes, well, I suppose I can. Thank you. Yes, so again, that's what's external to the survey. So I think the important thing there is to complement it by what the actual business community. So that was just identifying major catalytic projects that had happened within the area. But we also, as I say, complemented that with asking what the businesses had actually invested. yes, it is a fairly small amount, but I think it's still a positive amount, and it still does indicate positive sentiment. I mean, businesses indicated that they are investing. Yes, there may be a bit of bias towards public sector investment, but there certainly is private sector investment. And if they weren't confident about the area, they wouldn't be investing, or they wouldn't be expressing positive sentiments about it. So I take your point, and I agree it is relatively small relative to the public sector investment, but I think it still is a positive indicator. Thank you.
And if nobody else, I've got the floor.
You want to go again?
I've got two more if you don't mind.
No, sure, go for it.
I see nobody spoke about floodlines. Is nobody concerned about the floodlines anymore in terms of business? Because surely that would be a factor allowing people to invest or not invest in the area. Are we clearing that up to allow?
So it didn't expressly come out concern. I think there was a comment, we did ask them about lighting. Sorry, I'll just have a look here and see. Question was asked about lighting. Yes, so lighting was somewhat of an issue. They'd seen some form of improvement, but it wasn't I think there's probably very much to address that.
No, I'm talking floodlines. I'm talking about floods.
Oh, floodlines. Sorry, I was sitting here.
Water in the area already, so it's on top of mind for most people.
Sorry, I heard flood lighting there. My apologies. No, it didn't. It wasn't expressly raised by any of the business community. I'm sure, however, it does remain a pressing concern.
Yeah. Last question from me, and then I'll let somebody else go. The heritage number seems to be pretty low. We want to attract tourism and people into the area. How are we going to encourage people to look more towards the heritage factor?
Yes, I think that's what.
Maybe a higher level question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And outside of our scope, we have to speak to the agency that's responsible for it. So I'll pass that over. Suffice it to say that I think that the St. Peter's upgrade is certainly, now that it's complete or on the cusp of being completed, is certainly going to have a positive impact. But yeah.
Yes, okay, so Graham's here. As you already know, we do have an MOU with heritage and tourism bodies. We're crafting ways and plans to co-market the areas together in a more sustainable way. Projects like St. Peter's is such. And if Graham wants to give a bite to this one.
Yeah, thank you. Graham Taylor from the Historical Society of Port Elizabeth. I think we're very enthused by the MBDA's commitment to this Memorandum of Understanding. Heritage in the past has been underplayed and under-recognized. We completely and firmly of the belief that this is the single biggest opportunity for this inner city. We've taken a particular focus on the maritime heritage. We think it's an aspect that gave rise not only to the city during a modern era, but early communities were strongly tied to Algoa Bay for centuries, and it's something that's completely underplayed. We have changed the name from Port Elizabeth to Gqeberha, but the fact of the matter is that very few people actually understand what the meaning of it is, and actually to create a place around that. So there are numerous opportunities for very inclusive heritage growth. It needs to become a growth industry. Our heritage buildings, we saw this morning in the Herald with the collapse of the roof on the one flat there, on the newspaper house building. You know, all too often developers are viewing this as a liability to the city, but we firmly of the belief that we need to take a developmental type of approach, and these are assets that need to be sweated and brought into production. And if we get that right, we are certainly of the belief that, an emphasis on the maritime economy of the city, incorporating the maritime heritage, can yield fantastic returns. And all the assets are in place. All we've got to do is leverage them. Thanks.
Thank you, Graham. One last round of questions. There is from IFM.
I just want to ask the question. This Baakens Valley was predominantly South End. I'm a Cape Townian, so I'm from District 6, so I can speak from District 6 part. I don't hear any talks about what they're going to do in uplifting and making South End and getting the people that was here before, getting them back involved in this part of the community.
Dora will take that one.
So thank you for that question. It is very, very, very important to us. So I mentioned the mixed-use precinct. Well, in fact, in every project that we do, we have extensive stakeholder involvement to try and decide how we move forward. So St. Peter's, my colleague Tandi will tell you about all the engagement around St. Peter's to turn that back into a storytelling opportunity as well. In the South End mixed-use precinct, where there were a few homes before that were demolished, we are anticipating a process again with the families that either used to live there or links to that, probably through the South End Museum and other similar bodies that represent the communities. But that whole development aims to find a way to bring back, whether it's the children of families that live there, or whether it is the memory of, in terms of storytelling, in terms of turning that almost into a living museum. And I don't mean that we're going to rebuild what was there, but find a way to activate it and to tell the stories and to bring about reconciliation around all of that as well. So opportunities to actually live, work and play in the precinct by families or links to those that were removed, to go through a long process of understanding what that's going to look like is immediately important to us.
I remember a few years ago, my husband attended one of those. I think a few years ago, my husband attended one of those meetings in the northern areas, and I can say that's more 10 years ago, and nothing has happened as far as that is concerned. I just know the Fairview area, the people got properties, but I'm talking about specifically this area where my husband's family was from. You hear nothing, and it's just like a forgotten story. We take our